Hello, welcome back. I have a few minutes here free, and I thought that I would just talk about some of the books that I'm currently reading because I am actually currently in the middle of several books. And usually I don't read so many books, but a couple of these are essays and short story collections. And so I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth between them. So I am reading, or rather, I am rereading Ray Bradbury's Zen in the Art of Writing. So if you're new to the channel, you won't know this, but I used to write fiction. None of it was ever published, and I read a lot of books about writing, including Zen in the Art of Writing. And um, I'm finding in this reread, basically, I feel a lot of what I felt when I first read it, but I also feel a new appreciation for it in that I have to be honest about Ray Bradbury's writing. I really like the idea of Bradbury's writing. I really like his ideas, but his writing has this sickly sweet quality about it to me. It is so over the top. Now Randy Ray from the Literate Texan talked about how Bradbury's writing is less prose than poetry, right? Like his stories are poetry or poetic rather. And that really did resonate with me, and I've been wanting to give Bradbury another try because, for instance, I've read several of his short story collections. I've read, um, did he write the book Death? Was it Death is a Lonely Business? Is that, he wrote a book that was kind of a detective story. I can see it now. It's got a blue cover with like a horse from a merry-go-round on the cover, yeah. And he wrote the Martian Chronicles, for instance, and they're just so. Bradbury never stopped being like a 12-year-old boy, right? He was always filled with wonder and awe, and it's just too much for me. These are basically essays and forewords for some of the books he had written, new editions of some of the books he had written, and some of his writing advice is really solid. Like write 1,000 words a day, every day, no matter what. That's pretty solid advice. He says you have to keep at it for about 10 years before it really works its way down into your subconscious and it becomes second nature and everything starts to flow properly. That's how long it took for him. And there's some really interesting stories about how he wrote some of his books, about how he came to be a writer and that sort of thing. But really, this is more of a reflection on the events of his life and his thoughts about, what made him a writer and how he looks at writing. It's not going to help you really, other than to write 1,000 words a day and write every day. That's basically his his basic philosophy of writing is to be interested in everything and ask questions about everything. It's very inspiring, but um, I sometimes long for a more technical discussion, I guess, about writing itself, and that's just not what this book is, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. It's just, I don't know. I'm afraid that Bradbury is just never going to hook me the way that he has so many other people, and that bothers me. Um, I'm also reading stories out of the Barnes& and Noble collection, 100 Creepy Little Creature Stories. I think that I have read this before. Now, I have several of these. Barnes& and Noble released several of these back in the 90s. I think these are from the 90s. Okay, yeah, this is from 1994. And is it going to have a list of the other books? No, it isn't. But there are several of these about mysteries. There's one called like 100 Twisted Little Tales of Torment. There's 100 vampire stories and just that sort of thing. These are really nice. The stories are usually about 3 or 4 or 5 pages long. Some of them will sometimes be about 8 or 9 pages long. And I haven't really read any in this yet that have really stood out to me. I read one that was really, really, I liked it quite a bit. If I can find it, I will. Well, okay, so there was a story called The Cactus by Mildred Johnson, and it's about a lady who gets a cutting. Like her friend goes out in the desert and she finds these this patch of cactuses, and she takes a cutting and sends one to her friend, and it turns out that these cacti, however the right word for that is, they are actually sentient beings and they are malevolent, and I really enjoyed that. Ghouls of the Sea by J.B.S. Fullilove, Fullilove. I'm not sure how you would pronounce that name, but it's about a guy who is out on the beach and there's a rocky area, and every now and like when the tide goes down, there will be fish and things trapped in a like a shallow pit of water there, and he goes over to it, and there is a creature like a mermaid, but a very angry mermaid who wants to like kill him. And I like that story. He winds up getting knocked on the head and passes out, and of course nobody believes him that he saw this merman. And I'm just really enjoying these. I'm trying to read some every day. I'm not like beholden to reading all 100. I've thought about maybe Horror Mayhem is coming up very soon, and I thought maybe I'd just read a story a day from this for Horror Mayhem. I don't know if I will take part in that really, because I don't get along as well with horror as I used to. It is a very sad thing on my part, but I feel like I have read many of the top tier horror novels that were written, and the top tier horror stories, because I spent 20 years of my life reading horror. But there is a pretty big drop off after the top tier stuff, and I'm just not as forgiving with bad writing, bad plotting, villains that just aren't believable, that sort of thing, as I used to be. But I still love horror stories. I think I will always love horror short stories. And so I am also reading the complete short stories of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. I haven't read them in quite a long time, and I think that is just because they are mystery stories, and so it has taken me a long time to forget some of the mysteries and be able to come back and read them again with a fresh take on them. I'm really enjoying them. Last night I read The Adventure of the Cardboard Box, and I really love the illustrations. I always have. Even before I could read these stories, I used to carry around the copy of this book that I had and look at the illustrations. But it has this picture of Watson and Sherlock, and it says, "I fell into a brown study." And there's just something really funny to me about Watson staring at the ceiling like that, because I know the feeling, and I've known that feeling a little bit lately. And this is, completely illustrated. And I have the Signet edition, the two brown. Is it Signet? Maybe it's Bantam. But they're the brown editions with the photographs on the cover. But of course, they don't have illustrations at all. They have all the books and all the stories, but not the illustrations. I also have a copy of this that is it's like an exact reproduction of the stories from the Strand magazine. It's the same size, has all the illustrations, all the books, but it is just kind of ungainly because it's quite large. It's something like this, and those original Strands, they weren't actually they were magazines, but they weren't like we think of magazines. They were books, and they were quite large books. And I'm just really enjoying this. It's really kind of a weird thing. You think about how these are almost all murder stories. Like somebody's almost always in every story getting hit over the head with a club or shot. In The Adventure of the Cardboard Box, the cardboard box in question has 2 ears in it that have been cut off and sent to a lady. And it is just, I think it's enjoyable because we are going along with Sherlock Holmes. We're almost Watson, right? Or we're seeing it from Watson's perspective. But what I mean is that we are going along on the adventure, and we are seeing the detective work these things out, Sherlock Holmes work these things out, and so there is some satisfaction in like we took part in solving the crime or something like that. I don't know. It's very they're very good, and it's fun to go back and think about how these were written in the Victorian era, how the trains and the gas lights and everything like that, that would have been commonplace for the people of that time. But for us, it's like stepping into another world. And Arthur Conan Doyle really brought that era London, to life. It's really, really wonderful. And he had no idea. I don't think he had any idea that he was doing that, right? I mean, maybe later on, as he got older, maybe he realized that he had really written something that would last the ages. But I think it's interesting to look at it and know that he was just writing stories and trying to get a little bit of money. And yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of fun to read Sherlock Holmes again. And the another book I'm reading. So I started this last night. I'm 100 pages into it. I have been practicing reading without subvocalizing, having ups and downs. I think I'm doing all right, but it is Theodore H. White's Breach of Faith: The Fall of Richard Nixon, and I'm wearing the appropriate shirt to be reading a book about the fall of Richard Nixon, I think. Um, this is pretty good so far. It starts out, the very first chapter is about the last days of the presidency of Richard Nixon and how. So actually, Theodore White made it very clear to me what the big issue was with Watergate and the White House transcripts or the transcriptions of Nixon's conversations with his top aides, which is apparently, and it's kind of odd because I've read several books about Richard Nixon. I've read books about Watergate, and I think that just Theodore White made it very clear to me that apparently they were trying to get the CIA to stop the FBI from investigating the Watergate break-in. And I don't know why that had never been so clear to me before. I think it's because, like, if you read All the President's Men, it's very engaged in all this shady stuff going on, and it's a little bit hard to actually tell what the actual issue is, whereas Theodore White just got right to the point. And then he goes back and talks about Nixon's background, about where he came from, what made him the way that he was, how he got involved with these people who would lead to his downfall. I just read the chapter where he is talking about how Nixon assembled his team over the years with John Mitchell and eventually Haldeman and Ehrlichman, and how those people were just yes men who did what he wanted them to, or would just do anything for him. And when you're surrounded by yes men, things can go downhill, because if you're living in a bubble like that, you're kind of living outside of an everyday understanding of morality, I guess. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Saturday Evening Post Treasury. So I actually paid $10 for this quite a while ago, and anyone who watches this channel knows that I very rarely ever pay more than $3 for a book. But I wanted this, and they had actually dropped the price from $30. The price sticker's still right there. And so I thought 10 was acceptable. I've always wanted to read the Saturday Evening Post, and something I really regret is that about a year or two ago, I came across a big box full of Life magazine and the Saturday Evening Post they were from the 60s. I think the Saturday Evening Post was from the 50s. The magazines from that era are much larger than magazines today. And they were all, I think, $1 a piece. And I thought, no, what will I do with them? Where will I put them? I've regretted that ever since. The next time I went back, they were all gone. So I've always wanted to read the Saturday Evening Post because it was the magazine for generations. People would come home and there would be the Saturday Evening Post, and they would read it, and that's where they got their ideas about what was going on in the country and the world. And I'm enjoying this so far. This goes back from the very founding of the magazine up until, I want to say this is from 1956. This is from 1954. It has illustrations, if I can find any. Never can find any when you want them. It has advertisements. It has essays, short stories, and that sort of thing by names you would recognize immediately. Some you probably wouldn't, like Ring Lardner, which I've never been able to bring myself to enjoy a Ring Lardner story. He was very slangy and kind of the closest I can think of. They're not really, well, like H.L. Mencken, for instance, is kind of reminiscent of Ring Lardner. It's the same sort of snappy era, which I really haven't read very much Mencken, so don't hold me to that. We have Kenneth Roberts, Booth Tarkington, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Faulkner, G.K. Chesterton, and then you have some from that they had put in their magazine from earlier, like Edgar Allan Poe and Benjamin Franklin, Stephen Crane. You also have Jack London, Mary Roberts Rinehart, and quite a few more. There's some illustrations, and there's Who's Who and Why, Winston Churchill. That was actually a really good essay, or a biographical essay, I guess. I'm really enjoying this. There's a really good one. I wanted to read it out loud, but I couldn't, and it's about, or was it in this? I don't remember. Probably not. I'm probably getting them all mixed up because I'm currently in the middle of a essay reading project. So I'm trying to read an essay every single day in 2026. I have failed that. For one thing, I started about 2 months into the year. And also some days I have just plain forgotten, or I've been too busy to read an essay. And I've been writing them all down on paper. And when I miss a day, I put a big red line through well, words are failing me for some reason. You have lined paper and the spaces in between the lines. I put a red line in that space, and then I move on to the next one. And I have read something like 70 essays so far, something like that. I don't know if it's that many. It's quite a bit, 60, 70, something like that. I'd have to count them, but I'm really enjoying reading essays. I have all these essay collections, and I've been wanting to get to them for a long time. And I'm reading all kinds of stuff, all kinds of different stuff, short, long essays about, like I said, riveters, biographical essays about politicians. It's been a really fun experience, and I just haven't really known how to talk about it on the channel, so I really haven't brought it up but once or twice. And anyway, so that is, I don't know what the quality of this video is going to be. I just wanted to get on and talk for a minute about some of the stuff that I have been reading, and that is what I have been reading lately. And I'm hoping to finish Zen in the Art of Writing probably today. I'm hoping to finish Breach of Faith within the next couple of days. I would love to finish it like today. Like I said, I'm doing pretty good on my reading without sub-vocalizing, but I have good days and bad days, and I just sort of have to take it as it comes. If I try to force myself to do it, then it goes off the rails. One bad thing about Breach of Faith, by the way, is that it was moldy on the inside right in here, and I had to take some alcohol and wipe it all down. Once I did that, it's not on the pages or anything. Once I did that, I was having terrible allergies. Like my mouth dried out, my throat dried out, like my eyes started to kind of puff up. And anyway, I took and cleaned it off, and that pretty much went away. And now I'm rambling. So I am glad to have got this video out. Oh, I wanted to talk about, I don't know how many videos I'm going to be able to do in the next little while, because not for any personal reason or anything. It's that, so I have a laptop, and on my laptop I do all my video editing, and I've had it for 2 years, And recently I changed the battery in it because the battery that was in it was starting to get really weak, and I would plug it in and it would stink. And I was afraid it might, blow up or something or just quit working. So I ordered a battery for $26. I replaced the battery and everything was great for a little while, but now it's messing up on me. Like, I can't charge it unless I turn it on first and then plug it in. So if I plug in the charger while it's turned off, I can leave it on there all day long, turn it on, and it's still at 0. It just will not charge unless it's turned on first, and then I can turn it off and it'll charge. And then also it's doing something really frustrating, which it'll go from like 34% battery down to 11% battery in like 5 seconds. That's really frustrating. I've been doing all kinds of things to try to fix it. Apparently I'm going to have to like download some whole new thing. I don't know, it needs a really big update. If I do it wrong, apparently it could brick the computer. So I've been putting it off, but it's starting to get really frustrating. My point is, when I'm editing videos, it's really frustrating because if I start at like 80%, it'll drain the battery, and I'm afraid it'll just shut off right in the middle of it. So I'm trying to figure out how to fix that problem. It kind of makes me want to just get a desktop computer and not have to worry about batteries anymore, and not have to worry about Wi-Fi anymore, because then I could just run an Ethernet cable. Anyway, I'm going to end that video here, or I will ramble all day. I want to thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.